Welcome to another edition of That's a Data Problem. I'm your host, Daniel Newman, Principal Analyst and Founding Partner at Futurum Research. Excited to be joined today by Lisa Palmer, Chief Technical Advisor at Splunk, and I'll let her introduce herself fully in just a moment. And today's topic is powering exceptional digital experiences. Lisa Palmer, welcome to That's a Data Problem.
Thank you, Daniel. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have you here. Now, we're going to talk today about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about leadership, customer experiences. We're going to talk about IT and DevOps. From the core of what Splunk is doing to the impact that it's going to have on a business and its enterprise. We're going to cover all that. But before we jump into all that, before we put you on the firing line, that's a very nice way of me saying a great discussion. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody out there, because I'm sure they'd love to know a little bit more about you and your work at Splunk.
Great, thank you. As you said, I'm the Chief Technical Advisor for the Americas at Splunk, and I have the daily privilege of working with C-suite clients to help them to drive business outcomes through their data. My own experience as a CIO and advising over 900 clients during my tenure with Gartner gives me a unique perspective and makes me truly empathetic to the challenges that our customers face.
Big gig. And by the way, also a big fan of soccer, I came to find out in the green room. We're not going to hammer you on your favorite team because you may tell me something I don't like, but I always like to know a little bit of tidbit about somebody. So we've got that in common, Lisa. Let's jump in right now. Let's talk about, you came from a side, you've been interacting with customers as an analyst and working with a research firm. Now you're working on the vendor side, leading the technical advisory practice. What questions should leaders be asking themselves right now about digital customer experience?
So I think it's really important for customers to be thinking about things like, let's give an example. In 2018, 20% of customer interactions globally were digital. In 2020, it was 60%. So we're talking about a 3x jump. I would argue that as that percentage of interactions increases, they actually have an exponential impact. And so what do I mean by that? Customers themselves, their expectations are raising. The more of these interactions they have, they expect things to be seamless. They expect it to be secure. They expect us to be bringing innovative experiences to them. And simultaneously, we've got competition out there that's just intense, and they are constantly working to up their game as well. So we've got a triple whammy. We got more interactions that are happening digitally. We have each interaction becoming more important, and we've got competition that's fierce. So what are the keys to success inside of that? And if you're open to it, Daniel, I'll share kind of a personal story from the pandemic.
Absolutely. I think everybody loves a personal story.
So I have been an avid online grocery store customer for years. Just like many Americans, this convenience is key for me to kind of keep balance inside my crazy busy world. I love to also support my local grocer. Early in the pandemic, I tried to place my order, as I always have before, and repeatedly their system wasn't able to process my order. So after dozens of attempts, I finally relented. My cupboards were starting to look pretty bare. And I finally relented and ordered online from a large international grocer. So sadly, my grocer's local system that was clearly overwhelmed by this new volume caused me to move my business. And I suspect many other customers probably had that same experience.
Yeah, I got to imagine, Lisa, that it only takes one, two at most bad experiences for you to lose the relationship that it often takes dozens of interactions to create. And we're fickle people. We have a lot of choice now. So I think some of these examples in our own lives certainly serve as a great opportunity to understand the market and understand the forces and the importance of digital customer experiences. Yeah. Let me ask you a question though. Okay. Splunk, you're talking to me about digital customer experience. I analyze the industry. people don't think of Splunk as a digital customer experience company. People think of Splunk as an IT ops company, DevOps, secure ops, even observability, but not digital customer experience. So why are we leaning into that? Why are you starting there?
Yeah. So, our customers at this point have got to be asking themselves questions like, no longer can they ask themselves, are we going to invest in digital experiences? Now they've got to say, what are the right processes and technology that we need to succeed in this environment? And so if you think about Splunk, and to your point, maybe we're not the obvious ones that come to mind for that, because we really do have a core focus on empowering IT, DevOps, and security to get actionable insights that they can make a move on faster. So higher quality, faster decision making. So how does that equate to the customer experience? Well, these teams are foundational to driving business transformation. And we've got to have that underpinning in place to create those high quality digital customer experiences.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I believe, when I kind of was reading through, some of the way you work and the way you advise, and I did some pre-research on you. It looks like you sort of have a bit of a three-prong approach. When you look at it, innovation, performance, and security is sort of how you end up. You have to have those three foundations in order to get out the other end, these experiences that you're talking about. Can you share a little bit more about, sort of what you meant by those three prongs? You said something along the lines of customers are voting with their wallets for the best experiences, but to be an innovator, you need these three pillars. So talk about these three pillars a bit.
Okay, so let's start with innovation. So organizations who aren't rapidly releasing updates to satisfy their customers' new expectations are going to get left behind. So a company that's a great example of recognizing that and really leaning into it is a product design platform organization called Quantum Metric. And they got to unicorn status by building better products quickly and consistently experimenting. And they're helping their customers to do the exact same thing. Then if we think about performance, a split-second difference in performance can make or break an experience. Blue Apron gives us a great example of how they used increased website performance. So they actually improved their web loading by 30%. So imagine the impact on the customer experience that it now takes a third as long to quickly move them through that transaction process. So that's how performance can play such a critical role in customer experience. And then security as that third key pillar. We all know that data breaches destroy reputations. And, Zoom knew that this was the case. And to their credit, they saw a traffic spike of 30x at the beginning of the pandemic. That's just mind-blowing. They prioritized security because they knew how important this was going to be to ensure their customers' data was safe as they scaled. They clearly got this right, as Zoom has become one of the fastest growing SaaS companies of all time.
Absolutely. And that was just the beginning of the company's growth, by the way. I mean, 30 times early on became a lot of growth consistently. It ran into some challenges over the course of the pandemic. It addressed them pretty quickly. But I would agree with you, Lisa, that throughout the entire pandemic, and by the way, this won't be just a pandemic-based thing, the more that we've heard about some of these breaches, some of these ransomware attacks, the more security's found its way into the spotlight. And I would say that the first two prongs, I feel like were pretty well understood with innovation and experience, the innovation prong and the performance prong. I think companies have started to recognize the need for those. But I love that you include that third prong of security, because now more than ever, as privacy and security have become a forefront thought of some of the world's largest companies and some of the experiences that people are demanding, making sure that every company is putting that into their consideration is important. So speaking of considerations, what capabilities do you think organizations need to make sure they're consistently delivering on these customer expectations?
Yeah. The systems that power digital interactions have gotten more and more complex as they've evolved and improved. And this is only going to continue. Essentially, legacy monolithic systems, which inherently are difficult to evolve and almost never do, have been replaced with highly innovative and adaptive applications that are made up of dozens or even hundreds of unique services. So along with this architectural change, there's come a change in how teams have to work together to build, operate, and secure these systems. So the right data strategy can help organizations. So once you understand that the complexity that's been laid out, now you've got to really think about having a savvy data strategy that will help your organization to deal with things far beyond what has traditionally been thought of as customer experience analytics. Kind of the table stakes are optimizing every customer experience. What offers do we want to give to our customers? When do we contact them, et cetera? We've got to move way past that and get to where technology and security teams can come together to ensure a secure, highly performant, and innovative experience every time the customers interact with us.
Oh yeah, and I have no question, that every time and consistency is going to be, I would say one of the most important things, right? Is, you talked about your grocery store example. You probably had 10 great experiences, one bad one. That's the end. That consistent delivery of great experience is the make or break point right now, and tools that can kind of keep an eye on that, right? Technology, we'll talk more about ML and AI momentarily, but you actually had a pretty good example that you talked a little bit about. I believe it was care.com that was pretty representative of exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So the first capability that we see that organizations committed to truly great digital customer experience, what they need is a common data platform that'll allow them to take in and rapidly analyze and act on data from any source. So this must allow them to have the ability to see across the entire full stack of tech from front end to back end. And so what I mean by that is they need to know what happens with every customer interaction end to end. And so let's take that example of care.com. They use Splunk as a single platform and source of the truth. And as a result of that, they can holistically understand that end-to-end environment, and they can fix errors faster. They can improve their architecture. They can accelerate future releases, which means that they can all positively impact the customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to take you back though to the AI discussion here. You have a background in AI. I mentioned the automation. This is a big part of the Splunk platform. Historically we used the term applied analytics more than necessarily AI, but we're sort of converging 3 or 4 forces now. You've got automation, you've got applied analytics, you got machine learning, and you got AI. And a lot of consumers and a lot of even enterprise architects sort of conflate all these things, and they're all important. But let's just broadly look at this set of topics with your background. How are organizations leveraging these things, including AI, to fulfill the 3 pillars that you just mentioned?
Right. So practically speaking, in today's environment, what we're seeing is that the most successful applications of machine learning and artificial intelligence is for specific use cases. So for example, automating mundane tasks at scale is a powerful way to leverage what machines do best.
Yeah, I think that's that's kind of the simple, the straightforward. And by the way, I think these are the types of things that are becoming commonplace and well understood. Because like I said, you actually just said exactly what I did. You mentioned automation, right? And so, that's kind of, the way this is all coming together. We're starting to see one application and companies are building on it. And they're saying, hey, how do we make sure we can optimize performance of an application over time? What role can enterprise AI and ML play? What role could automation play? What role do we need to have architects and developers available to make sure that these things are always up and running? So with that in mind, now, that might be a use case, but then what? What's next for the enterprise? What do they do?
Absolutely. So if we think about those three pillars of securing, performing, and innovating, AI is critical in serving as a force multiplier to augment highly skilled humans. So if you think about highly complex modern systems that we were talking about before that are comprised of these hundreds of separate services, they generate huge quantities of data. And given their distributed nature and all of the tools that organizations may have to monitor for components of them, individuals that are tasked with securing and optimizing these systems are likely being overwhelmed with things like alerts. So with artificial intelligence applied to alert prioritization and spotting those important needles in the haystack, security analytics analysts, IT professionals, and developers all have the ability to now pivot away from those mundane things and really focus on those high value tasks that they can apply their human creativity and problem solving skills for. And when they're able to do that, if we jump back to my grocery store example for a minute, if you visualize how ML and AI are working together to force multiply what humans can do. What if, while I was trying to place my order, and I'm assuming there were dozens or even hundreds of other people trying to simultaneously place their orders and they were experiencing the same frustration that I was, what if my grocer's IT team had AI that was working to pop those most critical alerts to the top of their work queue? Then they could have immediately applied their people's creativity and problem solving skills specifically to those most critical issues. And perhaps if they'd had that capability, they would have maintained my business and the business of many others.
Okay, so tie this into some other examples. What about things like healthcare or education?
Great example. So let's take healthcare, for example. Patients now expect the ability to book appointments, pay their bills, and most importantly, the actual service component. They expect to be able to see their doctors via telehealth. So the ability to receive service is expected, and it's critically important to protect people, as we know in these challenging times. So what does this mean? It means that there's more data, there's more security issues, and there are more privacy concerns. So this is all about how can we use those small teams of humans to handle that huge volume increase in the same way. And that's where we need ML and AI to help us.
Yeah, that's a great point. The volumes of data always becomes a bit of the roadblock, right? If it's one small set of data, a person can do it, but in order to get more accurate, you need more data, and in order to actually be able to extract value, you need systems that can automate, that can analyze that data, and that's where AI and ML pick up in a big way. Now, AI ops are kind of taking a couple of these things together, and this is where Splunk really starts to shine as an organization, right? You take the AI, you layer it over the operations, and you apply it to drive business outcomes. So talk a little bit about that. How does AI ops drive an impact to a company's bottom line?
Great point. And this is definitely where Splunk shines. So we've seen organizations that are struggling to prevent incidents, to resolve outages, or to gain that end-to-end visibility without that strategic application of AI operations. In a recent example, we saw the Massachusetts vaccination website crash due to high volume traffic. Their IT team was scrambling to try to figure out what was the emerging problem, leaving many upset with the poor user experience they had. And more importantly, they were completely unable to schedule their COVID-19 vaccinations. So using AI ops tools, teams like theirs can mitigate scaling issues. They can prevent outages, and they can avoid revenue loss or customer satisfaction problems, which ultimately saves their organizations time, money, and customer contentment.
All right, so let's pivot here. Let's talk about where the workload, the environment, in a technical advisory role, I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of customers asking, well, where do the workloads go? Splunk itself shifted. Splunk Cloud has been a major transformation, right? The company went from a primarily on-prem offering to promoting and marketing a primarily cloud. Splunk Cloud, the observability business, all about cloud. So organizations are moving to the cloud. They're doing this to meet customer experiences and the customer expectations. But how do you suggest they think about this? What are you hearing when it comes to managing the environment, including where these workloads are placed?
Yeah. You know, cloud is absolutely critical to digital transformation. And the hard part is that cloud transformation is somewhat a necessary evil. Innovative developers and business teams are often leveraging the very best services for each individual task, and that results in this complex web of services across public clouds and on-prem environments. So this adding to this complexity is the fact that it's often containerized and highly ephemeral. So the tools most organizations have in place, which were built, as we talked about earlier, were really built specifically for monitoring these old applications on premises. This just simply doesn't work anymore. And I'll share a quote with you. I was recently speaking with a CIO, and he put it best when he said that managing the cloud journey is like doing heart surgery on a moving patient. I love that. I love that analogy. And while many organizations have great intentions about being strategic in the way that they adopt the cloud, we often see that the cloud begins or accelerates as something that happens to you. And that creation of additional complexity has got to be dealt with. The good news is that managing a complex multi-cloud and hybrid environment requires this idea of a data backbone that collects and analyzes data in near real time from every source. And Daniel, I've got some great examples if you want to dig into those.
Yeah, I would love to have you dig into those. I love the happens to you analogy, by the way, Lisa. I always talk to my kids about locus of control. I always say, do you make the world happen or does the world happen to you? And I think the pandemic, we saw a lot of it with the digital haves and digital have-nots, right? Those that had been grabbing transformation, that have been moving to the cloud, were able to rapidly, flexibly shift to deliver on experiences and business needs. Those that have been waiting, the world happened to them. And it's an unfortunate circumstance and an example, but it's a great example of exactly what you said. So with that in mind, yeah, I'd love to hear at least maybe one of these examples.
Right. So let's take Slack, for example. So they experienced this massive surge in demand that we talked about earlier during the pandemic, and it made it even more important to ensure that their security program was working effectively. So leveraging Splunk, Slack was able to introduce enhancements like launching API integrations to understand patterns of user behavior and operating in a zero trust network. Splunk helps Slack during all of this by bringing data into one place. So Slack literally uses Splunk for every critical application. They've taken this so far that they actually make the statement that if you cannot integrate with Splunk, we can't use your service. So this is how Splunk is critical to managing that complexity and overcoming those things that happen to us. And Slack just gives us a fantastic example.
Yeah, absolutely. And no question about it. So, let's look at that real world experience that you have, Lisa, as we wrap up this conversation. Over the years, talking to so many customers in this role as Chief Technical Advisor and across the Americas, share some examples, the companies that you're seeing that are really doing a great job of leveraging their data to do CX, customer experience. Sorry, that's an insider term, that do customer experience well.
I love the Domino's example. So Domino's has 15 different digital ordering channels, 15. So this includes smart TVs, Amazon Echo, Google Home devices, mobile phone apps, Slack, social media, and smartwatches. And collectively, they generate 65% of the sales in the US through those channels. So this is only possible by leveraging cloud and by leveraging all the data across Domino's entire environment to monitor, troubleshoot, and secure their business.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you guys also, and I got briefed on it, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. By the way, just thinking about that pizza, I'm hungry. I'm going to drop an emoji in my text now. Wasn't that what it was? Like you can take like a pizza emoji and drop it into a text. And I think the whole point of that, Lisa, really was this, it's quite simple. We will make whatever experience you prefer. Now, does everybody want to drop a pizza emoji to a certain text and get their pizzas delivered? No. But, my family, we eat a lot of Chipotle. We eat the same thing every time we get Chipotle. And so we literally go in and it's like, basically, what was your last order? So they took something like that, made it even easier. I don't have to go into the app. I don't have to do anything specific. I literally just say, last time I got a pepperoni, a large, and breadsticks and a Coke, and you hit that pizza emoji and you're going to get pepperoni and breadsticks and a Coke. And it just creates that predictability. You had one more example, though, that I thought was a little interesting, a little less known, but more complex. And that was, I believe it's a credit card processor in Japan called, is it Vesca?
Vesca, yes. They saw large growth in their business from increased demand for e-commerce and cardless payments during the pandemic. I don't know about you, but I certainly experienced many of the organizations where I tried to shop during the pandemic actually wouldn't take any cash. So Vesca actually benefited tremendously from this. So they had a monthly credit card payment transaction. Their amount went up to 10 million a month. So, however fantastic that was from a customer demand perspective, it could take 2 or 3 people an entire day to tackle one system failure. So despite that additional business volume, the company had to be able to manage through that. So they deployed Splunk and created a stress-free experience for monitoring their cloud architecture, even with their same limited staff. So Vesca experienced a 99% decrease in incident response workload after implementing Splunk. 99% decrease, that's huge. And now Vesca is able to automatically detect problems in just minutes versus an entire day. And that translates into better experiences for Vesca's customers and being able to effectively capitalize on opportunities in this new normal. It's been a boon for Vesca.
Absolutely. One of the themes that I'll take away from our entire discussion is there is huge customer experience upside in some of the little things, whether that's grabbing the ability for people to interact in the right channels, whether that's applying, AI ops and automation to make websites run a little bit faster. 99% decrease in incidents, I'd say, is more than a little thing, but it's material and it's probably not noticeable to the average consumer, but it was extraordinarily noticeable to the company, and then its ability to take resources and invest them in more important areas of experience delivery, product development, growth, et cetera. Lisa Palmer, Chief Technical Advisor for the Americas. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me here on That's a Data Problem.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for hosting me, Daniel.
And that's another edition of That's a Data Problem. I'm Daniel Newman, and I'll see you next time.